So I just got done watching the presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Before we go any further, let me just say that voting for either of these candidates is a vote to burn the system to the ground. Nothing going on in government right now, or in our government, well, most world governments, is sustainable, and neither of these candidates offer anything different than what's going on right now. And since anything that's going on right now is nothing is sustainable, it's all going to crash. It's all going to burn. It's all going to be chaos. But at least it'll be democratic chaos, I suppose. Hopefully we learn a lesson from it. So Donald Trump dropped the ball. I thought it was going to be much more entertaining. I thought he was going to run circles around Hillary Clinton. All of the scandals that have been persistent around her for years, I guess. You would think that would be enough for him to be able to tackle her and knock her down a notch or two. But not so. Not so. He ended up being on the defensive for a great portion of the time, and it made him look very bad. I only mildly want to see him torment Clinton and even eventually win the White House just because I want Clinton to suffer. I want her to live out the rest of her days knowing that she lost the presidential election to an orange clown who has possibly failed his entire life but still managed to make it to the very top. So my only desire for Trump to win is for Clinton to suffer, because I believe the outcome will be negligibly different from either one of them. So let's just run through a couple of the issues that they talked about and my responses to them. The debate was split into three portions. The first one, let's say, like economic. The second question I want to talk about is basically the racial issues in the United States. And the third one is foreign policy. As far as economics go, and obviously in any of these debates, a big thing is like jobs, jobs, jobs. Who's going to make more jobs? Who can promise the most jobs? I think Hillary Clinton promised 10 million jobs. It's like, fuck, from where? Like, what do we... Well, we'll do Trump first. Trump said lower taxes, especially the corporate tax. I think it's around 35 now, and he said lower it down to 15. Okay, good start. The right answer is zero. The right answer is zero. Taxation is theft. Fuck that shit. Lower it all the way down. Don't need to steal from people. And if you really want jobs to be created, well, let job creators keep all their damn money. And his second one was he kind of brought back his attack on China and trade deficits and trade deals that he's been talking. I think he kind of hit the height of all that stuff last year. Attacking China about devaluing the currency, and screwing us over and all that stuff. He kind of replayed some of that. But of course, trade deals should be pretty simple. You shouldn't have to argue very hard for them. You shouldn't have to fight very hard with other countries to get them. All you should have to do is like go to other countries and say, hey, we got some stuff we want to sell. You want to buy it? Okay, cool. Oh, you have some stuff? What if we give you some money and you send us some of that stuff? Is that cool? That should be it. In fact, government should probably stay completely out of it. It should stay completely out of it. What business is it of governments to say who Americans can buy and sell from and what taxes they're going to levy on it? And trying to manipulate trade deficits and leverage whether one country should be able to sell stuff more easily in the U.S. than other countries, or vice versa, or even worse, protectionist policies trying to make local goods cost less than foreign goods just because local goods aren't taxed as much. It's all insanity. It's all trying to tweak the knobs on the economy to make it do what you want to do. And that never works. So basically, he gave it is kind of the default Republican stance, like, okay, well, let's lower taxes and then try to have a free market with, the government asterisk next to it, but only as free as we'll allow it to be. Hillary Clinton gave, the progressive 1-2 punch in the economy, which is tax the rich more and increase investments. Of course, taxing the rich is insane because, one, they don't have enough money to pay for all the stuff that you want to invest and pay for. And two, investments can be abused, if we're going to be completely honest here, especially when she was talking about energy, renewable energies and investments in that and trying to get off of fossil fuels and stuff. It's like, that's fine. That's cool and stuff. But you know what happened? Remember the scandals for like the first 3 years of the Obama administration? Solyndra and a number of other green energy companies that took gobs and gobs of money from the Department of Energy, only to end up going out of business, and all these owners and investors just walking away with tons and tons of money. And then the only reason they got all this money is because they were in bed with the Department of Education, because they had connections. And that's the fundamental problem with, the government investing in infrastructure or technology or green energy or this and that. It's because only the connected people get the money. It's insane. But of course, she's heavily connected to Wall Street and big business and big banks and stuff. So it's not surprising. It's just surprising that everybody keeps falling for it. Of course, the real answer is to leave the market to do what it will. The market is, currently developing electric cars. It is currently developing better gas mileage. Of course, part of that is government, by government fiat or government mandate. But of course, that's not totally free of repercussions. There are studies that say that car manufacturers are chasing these efficiency standards so hard that they are making the cars out of lighter materials, and therefore materials that aren't as strong. And so the accidents that people get into are, they cause more injuries and fatalities. Because to reach these efficiency benchmarks, one of the best ways to do it is to make the vehicle lighter. And lighter vehicles mean lighter materials. Lighter materials mean they're less strong. And if the materials are less strong, well then accidents cause more damage and hurt more people. Yeah, and plus, you can be relatively confident that the companies that are started and are successful are so because they're actually good at what they do and not because they're connected. The next next question that needs to be talked about is the racial healing. And that was the term they used in the question, was what are you as a president going to do to help with racial healing? Of course, this ended up being a talk about their answers revolved around law enforcement and the friction between them and the general population, especially the black community. But let me just frame this before I get into like their answers, and hopefully it'll illustrate kind of the insanity of it all. A lot of people like to bring up the past and blame the actions of dead people for what's happening right now. And if we're going to go with that, I don't like doing that, because you don't blame people that are living now for the wrongdoings of people that have been long dead. And you can't directly link people that are suffering now with bad things that happened in the past, when those things happened so far in the past that these people weren't even a twinkle in their father's eye when it was happening. And so there's a division between, what's happened in the past and what's going on now. But if we're going to go that route, if we're going to say, well, let's look at the past because it's so important, well, what was the organization that facilitated all of the systemic racism and oppression of the black population and other minorities? The government. Who was responsible for instituting slavery and protecting it? Government. Who was responsible for the Jim Crow laws? Those were laws passed by legislators, by government, by Republicans and Democrats. Same thing with segregation. All of these massive, evil and unethical things that happened were written in stone by the government. Now, granted, society back during these times, they held racist beliefs. They weren't perfect. They were, a lot of people are downright bad, perhaps. But the government enforced it, wrote it in stone, and made a lot of it linger for longer than it needed to. And so now we're going to turn around, and the moderator and these candidates are going to pretend that government can fix racial tensions in the U.S. Seriously, if anything, government's proven that it should stay as far away as it can from these issues. Okay, so Donald Trump, his answer was, the unnuanced libertarian, Republican answer, law and order, law and order, law and order. We need to enforce our laws, blah, blah, this and that. And the second part of his answer was stop and frisk. Basically to take guns from people that shouldn't have them. So the answer is more government, and to completely miss, the underlying issues of what the black community is facing. There was no talk of the war on drugs. There was no talk of the welfare state. There was no talk of, criminalizing victimless crimes. The more laws and crimes you have, the more human actions that you outlaw, well, the more criminals you're going to have. It's not rocket science. It's not hard to figure out. And funny, Hillary Clinton started off her answer with praising the black community and how well it's doing and how robust it is, and how passionate the black church is, and all that stuff. It was it was the statements by a disconnected, rich old white woman. Much like the rich old white dude answer that Trump gave. And her answer here was similar to her answer on the economy. It was like, oh, we need government partnerships with churches and local organizations and this and that and this and that. I was like, well, see, did you forget about the separation of church and state? Like, so basically it was just more government, and she gave a little lip service to reforming mandatory minimums, which is a vague, indirect way of saying that, oh, maybe we should reconsider the war on drugs. But nope, she's a full supporter of the war on drugs, and therefore doesn't really care about underlying issues affecting minority communities, especially since drug use, as I've heard, is pretty equal as far as percentages between the races, and like just as many people use weed as black people do, percentage wise, but more black people end up in prison. That also might play into the larger amount of violence in the black community, which she didn't mention at all. She just talked about basically giving sensitivity training to cops. It's like, well, geez, why? How about you decriminalize some stuff, and then stop putting so many minorities in prison? How about we try that? Stop trapping them in poverty with welfare. But of course, so unnuanced reactions and answers on both sides. And finally, I think the coup de grace, foreign policy. Donald Trump really could have hammered Clinton into the ground here, but he missed his opportunity. He did try to link the current state of the Middle East to Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, selling arms to various dictatorships, bombing various countries into the ground, to the point where, and destabilizing regions to the point where now we have a migrant crisis. I mean, it's partly her fault, or at least the policies she supports, that have driven, the welfare, the immigration crisis. But she gets to skip over that because, I don't know, she holds the proper liberal policies, and they trump any neocon, hawk, military intervention beliefs that she has. I mean, yeah, that was Trump's biggest flaw here. He could have attacked her on so many different angles, so many different ways, especially the email thing and her, jeopardizing confidential information with her private email server. But he spent a huge amount of time defending himself from accusations that he supported the Iraq War originally and then flip-flopped on it. I mean, it's an easy fix. It's an easy fix for him. All he could have said was, oh, you know what, at the time, I was a businessman and an entertainer. I was on TV and stuff. That was just my beliefs at the time. I didn't have any, security clearances. I didn't have any briefings. I didn't have any expertise in the area. It was just, basically, I was just mouthing off. Hillary Clinton doesn't have that luxury. She's been in politics forever. She's held public office at the, I think before, yeah, leading up to 9/11. I think she was a senator. She's had security briefings. She's had clearances. She's had everything. She has no excuse. So it would have been easy for him to turn around and say, you know what? I was just a rich douche throwing, mouthing off about things I didn't really know about. Hillary Clinton, though, wrong forever, and hasn't learned anything from it. That was an easy thing he could have flipped back on her. And it's kind of funny. I think towards the end, when he was kind of on the defensive and flustering and throwing these rhetorical punches and trying to even the playing field with Clinton, I couldn't help but think that for years he donated to the Clinton Foundation and to Clinton campaigns, and he's been friends with them forever. He's throwing it. he's purposefully throwing it. He's maybe he is an agent of the reptilian queen, and he's fooled us all. So yeah, the answer of the day, the takeaway is that big government is here to stay. Both candidates support it. Both candidates will continue policies that will eventually crush the country, whether that is a fast and chaotic process or a slow landing. We are still on the course, and I think irrevocably so. That's a tough word to say. Well, thanks for listening. I hope some of these points have been pertinent and persuasive. I will talk to you later. Bye.